Why do you always seem to be friend-zoned when you spend time with a new girl? In today's special episode, we are going to drill down and try to expose the low-level mechanics of attraction, in the same manner as we usually deal with other topics, and explain why this phenomenon occurs, and see if there is a way to prevent being friend-zoned. The theory here is a bit controversial. Western contemporary society of today is heavily influenced by feminism, which goes against this way of thinking. And I'm not picking sides here, but I will try to look past the politically correct and just give you the unfiltered truth as I see it. But sensitive viewers, you have been warned. Tonight at Dr. Jonas, stay tuned. Sup guys, welcome to today's show. I'm going to start with a core issue here. You're a nice guy, right? In many other occasions in life, that is a positive quality, but not when it comes to the initial phase of attraction. In fact, it is rather devastating. Being a nice guy is bound to make you friend zone in 9 out of 10 cases. So how do nice guys get girls then? It does happen, right? Right. But if you fit that category and have succeeded in your endeavor, try to look back at your first couple of dates. What you are probably going to remember is that you behaved rather differently than nice. Attraction is a game of tug of war. You take a step forward, then she takes a step, then you again, and so on. And you are not being nice to each other, at least not all of the time. You are making sarcastic jokes with her, but with a lot of heart, and she jokes back. In Sweden we have an old saying, love begins with a fight, and it is very true still, but not an actual fight, more like teasing while smiling with your eyes and being tender. So why does this attract? How do the mechanics work and why? As I see it, there are the biological reason and the social reason. So if we start with the social one, a girl becomes attracted to a guy due to, well, she needs to feel that he's a man, right? So she will compare the guy to the guys she's met her entire life. And how have they been treating her? Maybe you can look back at when you went to upper middle school or something like that, being like 12, 13 years of age. You might remember that the guys were like saying nasty things to the girls, they were groping them and all that stuff, right? And that leaves an impression, of course. So that's the one thing, the social part of it. She expects guys to be in a certain way, basically. And if one differs from that, it might be bad. Not always, of course. All right, so the biological reason is more interesting, I think. And I'm gonna try to explain what I mean by telling an example from my own life. Multiple years ago when I was in my early 20s, me and some friends were going to the coast. We rented a cabin and we were gonna drink beer and party. And we invited a couple of girls who were a bit younger than us, a couple of years, like 18 or something. And we partied together. I usually I'm usually not a bad drunk, but sometimes, like 1 out of 20 cases, I can get a bad trip, basically, if you can call it that. And this was one of these occasions. I don't get aggressive, but I get, I behaved very immaturely, and I was a pain, basically. So, and rather mean as well. So the girls left with their first impression of me as an idiot, basically. And even the guys felt a little bit annoyed with me. But the interesting thing is this. A couple of weeks later, I went to a party and I knew that these girls would be there, and I haven't met them since. And I would be certain that they would not be very happy that I was there, right? Me being an idiot and all. But the interesting thing is when I went into the party, the first of the girls who saw me, she yelled like, "Oh, Jonas is here." And then all three came running towards me with their arms stretched and all bear hugged me and said it was so great that I'm at that party. And they were really excited of me being there. And I thought a lot about this later on. How is this possible? I behaved like an idiot. It was the first time they ever met with me. And the second time I meet them, it's like they like me very much. And it took me a while to figure this out, but the human brain is very bad at remembering feelings. So you can remember the general concept of a feeling, but if you try to relive that feeling from a memory, it's very difficult. However, what you do remember is the intensity of the feeling. So the important lesson here is if you make an impression, good or bad, it might be remembered as good, since the important thing is that you ignite the feeling, because that's what will be remembered. I think this is really interesting stuff, and the same is true when you go on a first date, let's say. So you need to balance the feeling of her being, well, of her thinking that you're a nice guy, but also a little bit afraid and excited. So you have to have that balance, and that's the most important thing. But you do not want to end up in the creepy category, though. So don't talk about her body or make any over-sexualized thing. Just focus on the tease, basically. And if you have tried and failed multiple times going into the friend zone, I think it's time to try something different. All right, that's all for today. Please tell in the comments if you try this out and if you succeed. And thanks for watching. Thanks for today.